Hi, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of Newsmakers. All this week, we're talking to people from Chicago, where the Democratic National Convention is going on. Today is Wednesday, August 21st, and I am very pleased to welcome in an old friend, colleague, and probably one of the most stylish writers and
That's a low bar.
in the firmament of political writers, and I mean that seriously. Joe is really a fine writer. Joe Garofoli, senior political writer, I believe, for the San Francisco Chronicle. Is that so that they don't have to pay you overtime then? If you're,
That's exactly the reason. Thank you very much. I think
I used to have that job. I remember that job.
yes, you had this job years ago. By the way, I want to just tell the viewers that if this segment blows, just blame Jerry because he hired me 24 years ago at the Chronicle.
There you go. Well, sometimes we can bury our mistakes and sometimes we can't. But anyway, Joe is he's sort of got this thing where it's the best of times and it's the worst of times for a political writer, which is a politician from your hometown ends up as being the presidential nominee. So Joe has been really hustling, particularly for the last month and since the change was made. And he's with a team in Chicago covering the convention. So, Joe, first of all, thanks for doing it. You you have known of and covered Kamala Harris since she was the district attorney, I think elected in 2003. Uh, just first of all, a little bit. I mean, what was your impression then? How has she changed? How is she doing? What do you think?
I have not seen her this much in her skin since her 2016 Senate race, where she is, really she is feels very comfortable in who she is. I think the presidential race a few years ago was kind of a mess. It was an amazing launch in downtown Oakland, 20,000 people there, right in front of Oakland City Hall. But she was getting lost in the policy weeds which you know Willie Brown once goofed on me because I said, well, she's not really been a politician before, which she's obviously been an elected official for many years, but she only spent 2 years in the Senate, and she starts taking all these positions like she's against fracking and she's for Medicare for all and eliminating private insurance companies. Well, no, I take that back. I mean, well,
Right.
let's keep it in over 10 years. So, but this is the Kamala Harris, who was a phenomenon when she was elected in 2003. She defeated a longtime district attorney, a champion of the progressives, and it was a bit of a surprise. She started 6% in the polls, and she beat this guy, Terrence Hallinan. And it was a surprise victory, and then she barely won in 2010 when she ran for the state attorney general. But one of the funny things about that first race, as you remember, is the coalition she put together, which is her consultant Jim Stearns said that the very rare coalition. She had the Bayview neighborhood, predominantly Black neighborhood in San Francisco. She had the Castro, predominantly LGBTQ neighborhood, and she had Pacific Heights, where all the rich folks live. And I was like, whoa, how did you pull that together? And it was an unusual coalition that you really don't see much anymore, or really since. So she's gonna have to pull together a different coalition this time too.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point because she really has been much more of a office holder than a politician in the terms of campaigning. So I've been surprised too about how kind of liberated she seems and just herself. She was so constrained in that 2020 race. It was like painful to watch at some point. One of the things that she's going to deal with and is already dealing with in the attacks from the Trump campaign is that she is from San Francisco, technically Oakland, Berkeley. And San Francisco becomes sort of this punching bag. I mean, I think it was when the convention, the Democratic convention, was in the city, was in San Francisco 40 years ago. They coined the Republicans coined the phrase "San Francisco Democrats" for everything that was left wing and wrong with that. But you have an interesting column today about how the mayor is in town in Chicago and put on an event with some tech money help to try to combat that. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was the mayor, the current mayor, London Breed, is currently up for re-election, and she's facing four fairly strong challengers, and basically they ran against her because of the what we like to call here in San Francisco, and she doesn't like to call, the doom loop, and how San Francisco is sort of, because after the pandemic, very big tech town these days, and many people worked from home or left and left the city entirely and worked elsewhere. The downtown is emptied. The city's economy is really collapsed in some ways. But and so that's sort of had a spiraling effect. Fewer people downtown, small businesses are closing up. The BART, the rapid transit system, the bus system doesn't have riders, and so. And this sort of builds on itself and creates a doom loop.
Well, and the homeless issue, as well as the drugs, fentanyl as well.
Right. The homeless issue exploded. Homeless folks, many more encampments. The fentanyl people, record number of fentanyl deaths. Crime went up. Now, a lot of those measures are coming down over the last couple of years as it stabilized, but still, her approval rating is terrible. So they're pushing back on, and Trump has seized upon this because the imagery is, for the last couple of
And
years.
Fox News has picked it up for a couple of years, really.
My goodness, it's like they could have their own program called San Francisco horror stories. Zombie apocalypse San Francisco would be a whole story of featuring images of people around San Francisco, which is legitimate in a few neighborhoods, but certainly not across the whole city. Anyways, Trump picks up on this and he says, San Francisco, Kamala Harris destroyed San Francisco. And the other day he said, she destroyed it 15 years ago. It used to be a great city. Well, if you do the math on that one, she was district attorney then. So, I mean, he wants, as usual, the facts don't typically line up, but, it's an effective message to people in battleground states who don't, follow the nuances and all that stuff. So so Breed pushes back with this party last night. It's called San Francisco Speaks, a Night of Truth and Technology, which sounds, like a seminar that you wouldn't go to the next day if you're kind of a little too hungover. So, but it's at a beautiful club called Tao here in San Francisco. There are San Francisco themed drinks, whiskey drinks. It's actually a paper plane that they called the Golden Gate. Endless conga line of sushi and Wagyu beef and tuna tartare being passed. So, and the Killers, a band that's very popular, plays. I asked Chris Larson, the cryptocurrency billionaire, how much this all cost him, and he's like, I haven't been counting. So this is and Breed gave us some remarks. She stood up there before the Killers came on. She said, hey, we're all here to support Kamala Harris. She's very close to Harris. She's the mentor of some sorts. And she said, but while you're here, let's talk about San Francisco. We're the home. The Republicans like to rip on San Francisco, but that they don't even know. They should look at their iPhone, which was developed down the road and introduced here, and go to their Airbnb, which is headquartered here, and go and take an Uber or Lyft, which are both headquartered here. And they could send a mean tweet on Twitter that's like, well, it's no longer headquartered here, but that's okay, she said, which is
That's okay. Yeah.
That's okay. Yeah, and a lot of San Franciscans aren't too sad about seeing Elon leave town. So anyway, so this is this pushback on this, and and the audience is the national audience. Oh, by the way, they had video screens in the back featuring, it was a weird juxtaposition because the iconic images of the Golden Gate Bridge and Chinatown and the Castro, but over it were things like more police are hired, the scripts, crime is down, now police can follow criminals via in high-speed chases. And like, okay, if I saw that, I don't know, I kind of want to go there, but then I want to Google that stuff beforehand to find out like what am I getting myself into at the San Francisco vacation. So it was a night, and the audience, of course, is all these delegates in town from all over the country, and the national media, who of course can't turn down free drinks and food.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God, that was yeah. So, anyways, it was yeah, it was a good vibe, a good time, and I asked them. I think I kind of overestimated what the educational value would be. People like going and looking at the video screens and saying, "Oh, maybe things aren't too bad." Nobody looked at the video screens. They made a beeline for the free food and the drink. And but it was mostly about creating a vibe, and San Francisco's punch back where this is what we can do best. We're not going to punch back and say Trump, you suck. We're going to punch back and say, hey, this is why San Francisco is cool. Yeah, come here, you have a good time, and on that level, the evening was a success.
Yeah, and it raises a couple of other issues. First of all, the dirty little secret, of course, is national political conventions is where are the best parties, which is, well, you got to troll for items or something, I guess.
Yes. I had my notebook there. I don't want to
worry. But the other thing that's interesting is the tech bro money with all of these Bay Area, San Francisco zillionaires, and of course, that's kind of where JD Vance arises from the Peter Thiel award. But here you have sort of the other side of it, this cryptocurrency guy who's springing for it. Vance had a huge fundraiser in San Francisco not too long ago. I forget who put that one on, but
David Sachs.
David Sachs
is an investor. In fact, he spoke at the Republican convention, and he's sort of a recent convert to Trump. The fundraiser was at Vance's house in Pacific Heights, and he said, "Oh, San Francisco is a cesspool." And he, that was his money line at the convention. I don't know. He lives in, beautiful spot in Pacific Heights. I don't know what cesspool he might have to be driven to a cesspool, but so anyways, but that fundraiser raised $11 million for Trump. Trump came to it actually. And it attracted folks like the Winklevoss twins, from Facebook.
Who did not invent Facebook?
Who did not? But they are into crypto now. So it was a lot of crypto folks who were there. Trump, by the way, a couple of years ago said crypto's a scam. I don't believe it. That now he's like, I am going to be the crypto president because they're giving me $11 million.
Oh, he's being driven in his Tesla, which he's also been converted to. Yeah, he's a cheap date. But it's interesting because because even though Kamala's been the vice president for the last 3.5 years, people sort of have a surface knowledge of her, but they don't really know her. And I think, that's sort of what job one ought to be for this convention going forward, because without defining herself, then Trump ends up filling in the definition of her with stuff like the doom loop and Fox News. And here's San Francisco. This is what she represents. How do you think the convention is doing so far in that mission, in kind of filling out who she is on a more human and personal level?
Well, they're getting there, but they certainly haven't filled it out yet. The first night was devoted to Joe Biden, and it was the first night was Joe, we love you, we love Joe. People were chanting, thank you, Joe, and now Joe, get the hell out. But that was night one, and then last night was the Obamas, and they were still doing a lot of punching at Trump. They vouched for Kamala. They've known her for 20 years. And so it's getting there, but there's still, I think a lot of Americans outside of California don't know who she is. We did 4 years ago, we did this podcast series, 6 parts, Who is Kamala Harris? And part of the challenge with her is that she's always kind of wrestled with this internally, or I should say externally. Parents were met in Berkeley, were immigrants, and they met there, and they met there during civil rights demonstrations, and so they were very active. They were intellectuals, they were academics, and so her side is very her upbringing was very progressive. She grew up going to a place called Rainbow Sign in Berkeley, where folks like Ralph Ellison and Maya Angelou would come, and folks would so she was exposed to the Black intellectuals of the time. And then but she said, I want to be a prosecutor. And when she told her family that, her family was like, whoa, what? And she said, I can get more done working from the inside than I can from the outside. So she has this career as a prosecutor, San Francisco, and a state attorney general. And then she runs for Senate. And then all of a sudden she gets to Washington and she kind of makes a left turn. She embraces her progressivism. So the questions about Harris has always been, is she progressive? Is she a cop? And now she's coming back to cop because partially because she's running against a felon. And so it's an easy framing. I'm the prosecutor, he's the felon. And she's pulling back from some of those progressive positions she took 4 years ago. And now she's against fracking. Then she was for fracking. Then she was for Medicare for all. Now she's like, I'm not talking about. Yeah, it's like, okay. So anyways, that's the challenge, is that she's always been very difficult to pin down as this or that. And so, we want little easy boxes, especially 79 days out from a campaign. So, and that's the challenge she faces.
Yeah. Well, both district attorney and attorney general are very, I guess, process focused offices. So it's not like she ever had when you go to the legislature, then everybody's like, what is your position on this? And what is and she never really had to take those positions before. She had to make decisions. I thought last night, Tuesday night, that her husband, Doug Emhoff, did a terrific job about humanizing her and doing what I think they need to do, which is tell stories to give people an idea who she. What did you think of his speech?
I thought it was very good in that way, and he comes across as a real dude. I remember the first time I met him was at a California Republican Party convention, and I think they had just gotten married.
Democratic Party.
Did I say California Democratic Party convention? Yeah, no, that would be odd. And I met him, and he's like contemporary, like my age or on my age, and I said, so what do you think of all this stuff? He goes, yeah, my buddies tease me. They say I'm the arm candy, and so he's very self-effacing. Had him on our podcast a while back, and he comes across as that is what you see is what you get. He's anti-Semitism has become a major issue for him in combating anti-Semitism. But, as he says, I wasn't really raised, in a very religious household. We're more culturally Jewish, but he has embraced this issue. And he really is into her. And he's, and which is, it seems like a normal relationship, two middle-aged folks.
And his ex-wife is there making a video. I mean, it's classic blended family, which is a good message, I think, for the sort of mainstream Americans, because a lot of people are in that situation.
Absolutely, and a very California thing too, I think, I dare say. But one thing I did notice is that I think that the Democratic Party, or maybe some of the organizers of the convention, are still a little bit leery about who Harris is and where she came from. They showed a video, one of those little biographical videos in between speakers the other day. And they say, oh, here is where Kamala Harris grew up, the house that she grew up. Here's the street that she grew up. Here's some photos of her when she's a kid. Now, she was born in Oakland and raised in Berkeley. The two words that are not mentioned in this biographical bit are Oakland and Berkeley. And they, I can only, and we're writing about this in sfchronicle.com, the Chronicle, and my only guess is, and I've heard this from others, and I spoke to some people who are legislators there who, they don't even want to talk about this at all, but the images of Berkeley radicals, and oh my gosh. And
right, it makes San Francisco look like Omaha.
Exactly. It's the same thing. And they're worried about, what we were talking about earlier, about Trump nailing him about, oh, you're from Oakland. Look at all the homeless in Oakland. And look at all the crime in Oakland. So she's always been kind of wrestling with these images that are the things, the way people try to describe her. So that's going to be her challenge, and we'll see. There's so much. The enthusiasm, et cetera, is, as we all know, is nothing like I've seen since Obama in 2008. And so that's helpful, but vibes don't win an election.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. The other thing, that I see a lot of on social media, TikTok particularly, and Twitter as well, these people who, are sort of speaking right to the camera and are trying to be like regular people, but I think it's pretty clear they're paid and produced by the Trump campaign. And there's sort of this sotto voce thing about sometimes not so sotto with Harmeet Dillon, the Republican lawyer from San Francisco, about how she slept her way to the top because she used to date Willie Brown back, before the last ice age or something like that. But they're really kind of pushing that out there too. Talk a little bit about Willie Brown, who Trump claims he was in a helicopter with, and as they were plunging to their death, Willie decided to share stories about Kamala Harris. Talk a little bit about that whole situation and that relationship.
Yeah. Willie Brown was well, first of all, he and Harris dated about 1994, 95 for about a year and a half or so. And Willie was married. Willie is still married. And that's a thing that really doesn't get told in that story. He and his wife have been, they remain married, but he sees other people, and that's been the case since like the mid 80s, right, Jerry?
Yeah, and they live separately,
Homes.
and yeah, it's a San Francisco thing.
And it is another blended family. I mean, they talk all the time, et cetera, et cetera. Anyways, so Trump at this Mar-a-Lago press conference a couple of weeks ago goes, as he said, the helicopter story. And so as soon as I was watching it, and I was like, those things go on for so long. There's so many strands you could do. But when he said Willie, whoa, because it was a sound like a conservative media person asking a question, trying to bait him into this whole line. And so he tells the helicopter story. So of course I call Willie, and Willie says, I'm having lunch. It's a little afternoon. He goes, call me at 2:00. And I was like, 2-hour lunch. I was like, deadline, man.
Willie likes to have a proper lunch.
It's a proper lunch. So he eats, with like an audience of folks, movers and shakers every day in the same restaurant in San Francisco all the time. So I call him up and I said, do you hear what Trump said? He goes, if that had ever happened, wouldn't you think I would have told you about it? I would have told everybody about it. Because I never did that. And I said, and you never talked any crap about Harris to him? No. I wouldn't talk about any woman to him, because then he would take a verbal shot at them. And I said, by the way, when's the last time you talked to Kamala? And he said, it's been 3 or 4 years. So, I mean, it's like they're not even at that point. But
yeah.
It was an issue. And it turns out, well, at first we're trying to figure out, like, what is Trump talking about? I think it was the New York Times said, well, wait a minute. Trump was on a helicopter ride inspecting the wildfires when he was president in California a couple of years ago with Gavin Newsom and Jerry Brown, who, for those who might have forgotten, is a tall white man.
Well, yeah, Willie, yeah, brother from another mother, as he used to introduce the governor.
And then it turns out that he was the actual person that he was referring to was a legislator, State Senator Holden from Southern California, who was a tall, balding black man, as opposed to a short, balding black man, Willie Brown. So, you can do with that as you with. Trump can't tell black people apart. I mean, where do you go with that? So, anyways, Willie. So, I actually was invited to a Willie lunch last Saturday at this same restaurant with a couple other folks. And as I pull up to the restaurant, there are 2 television cameras outside. And I go, wait a minute, what is going on there? I thought this was just like lunch. And Willie has before lunch was a press conference with he and his longtime friend and attorney Joe Garofoli, which is he was a very powerful attorney and major Democratic fundraiser and donor and such. And they called the press conference and said that if Trump doesn't stop this, Willie Brown is going to sue. And it's like, sue Trump. And I was like, for what? And it's like defamation. And it's like okay, but it was so. Anyways, Willie Brown invites us to lunch, and then we have to go write a story about it. So it was that's an insight into the world of Willie Brown.
But it's the kind of stuff, they just throw anything against the wall. That Willie's greatest line, of course, about that relationship, we remember when he said it was a perfect relationship. She was in love with me, and I was in love with me too, which. But more recently, he's Carla Marinucci was on a podcast with him the other day, and somebody asked this question about, is it going to damage Kamala Harris, this San Francisco thing? And Willie says, I just hope they don't find out she dumped me. And
yes, and he also told, I think he told Jonathan Martin at the Politico that he's worried that if she becomes president, she will deport him.
Back to Texas.
Texas, to Mineola.
Back to Mineola, right. All right, let's talk about another powerful San Franciscan, Nancy Pelosi, former Speaker Pelosi, who's also pretty high profile at this convention. And as everybody knows, was active behind the scenes in pressuring President Biden to step back, really an extraordinary thing. You had a piece the other day, I guess you interviewed her about it. And it was interesting to me because she's such a progressive, where she said Kamala needs to govern from the center. That was the quote, I think. What was that all about?
Well, she said, Pelosi, bottom line, is all about winning. I mean, the Republicans have spent tens of millions of dollars against her, 50 million, I think, in 2022's campaign. Basically, calling her a San Francisco liberal or radical, blah, 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 and demonizing her in many ways. But she would, and they try to link every person that she has some kind of connection with to them, and in an effort to sort of tie people in more moderate states, more moderate districts to this San Francisco radical, and quote unquote. So she says. It really so she tells these people, these other legislators, don't worry about it. Let them rip on me. You do if you have to disavow me, do it. So she doesn't care. She wants the seat. She wants to win. So her goal here is winning a lot of these moderate Midwestern states, and also in North Carolina back on the map, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. Even Arizona and now Nevada. She said, don't go left wing on this. Govern from the center. Promise you're going to govern from the center, because that's what people want to hear. These are the people who are going to decide this election. At the same time, though, she encouraged Democrats to have a message that is bold, progressive, and not menacing. And I asked her,
that was her words, not menacing?
Not menacing. And so I asked her, I was like, what is something that's menacing? And she told a story about, she said, well, I was in Michigan recently with Governor Whitmer, who she really likes Whitmer. And I told her that, and voters there, that, what works in San Francisco will work in Michigan. But what works in Michigan, I'm sorry, what works in Michigan, I blew the line. What works in Michigan will work in San Francisco, but what works in San Francisco will not work in Michigan. So in other words, stop talking about Medicare for all, and stop talking about, banning fracking and all these other things, because that's going to alienate a lot of voters and my native part of Western Pennsylvania in particular for fracking. So it's always about winning with Pelosi, and that's what she said to that one.
Yeah. Well, and while she was helping to convince President Biden to make the choice himself, to get out, There was also, you remember, this question of we could go one or two ways. It could be Harris, the nominee, or we could have this open convention or some game show, or I don't know what it was. And she seemed to be sort of favoring the latter, that, that there would be other people. And maybe it was because of Whitmer or Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, or whatever. Did you get the sense that she was at all unhappy that it's emerged that it is Kamala, or is she 110% on board?
Well, no, it was funny because I wrote something a few weeks ago that said, she is so deliberate in everything she does. Very, she does not mince a word. And our mutual friend Mark Barabak of the LA Times was next to me. We were talking, and he said, "Well, do you regret anything that you did involving that?" And she says, "Why would you?" She literally said, "Why would you ask me that? I'm so deliberate in everything I do." I was like, next question. That was it. It's like, ooh. And so it was and that's true. She follow Pelosi all the time. Even now, this woman has raised over $1 billion for the Democratic Party. She knows all the donors. She knows she knows all the members' families. She's one of those people who, like, how are your kids? How was the tonsillectomy? Blah blah blah. And so that's that. And she doesn't make her members take a vote that they don't want to. She is the ultimate strategist and vote counter, and she's obviously very, very good at her job. And still, I mean, these guys, Pete Aguilar, who's a top official in the Democratic Party, Hakeem Jeffries, they both told me, like, we still go to her a lot. I mean, and she doesn't insert herself. But she does. She will counsel you if you do. The line I love is she said when she stepped down from leadership, she says, "I'm not going to be that mother-in-law in the kitchen say, no, don't make the meatloaf like this. My son doesn't like it that way. But if you ask me how to make the meatloaf, I'm going to go over and do it." First of all, Pelosi's not making meatloaf. She'll meatballs, maybe, but no meatloaf.
Yeah. Or meatloaf ice cream, maybe she would have too.
Meatloaf, yes, or meatloaf espresso.
But that whole generation of San Francisco Pauls, I mean, Willie Brown, Nancy Pelosi, Dianne Feinstein, Barbara Boxer. I mean, it really is extraordinary, that group that came out and still wield some influence. Dianne obviously passed away, but so she's going to speak tonight, Pelosi. Where do you think she'll go with that? Personal stuff about Kamala, filling that out, policy
No,
stuff? Because she needs to do both.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Pelosi, for as marvelous a master legislator she likes to call herself, she is. Speaking, that's not her forte.
Terrible.
Yeah, I mean, it won't be. The ovation in the room will be thunderous. It will be amazing. She is worshipped here among these Democrats. But it might be a little personal stuff, but it will be mostly focused on winning and how Democrats are one of her famous aphorisms is when people are, the Democrats' famous bedwetters, oh my God, she always says, don't agonize, organize. Kind of like what Michelle Obama said last night, do something. That's her version of that. So I wouldn't, it's not going to be a barn burner tonight. It's be like, oh, everybody will be happy about Pelosi and, just to see her. But I wouldn't set the DVR on that one.
And of course, she went through that horrible thing with her husband and getting attacked, and the knucklehead that broke in and hit him with a hammer. I mean, she's been through a lot.
Oh my gosh, yes, yeah, terrible for the whole family. Yeah.
Let's talk about the last couple of nights of the convention. Obviously, Michelle and Barack Obama lit it up last night. Do you feel like, again, this is the question that I keep wondering, did they say enough about Harris? I mean, they obviously, vouched for her.
Yeah.
But did they tell you who she was, or was it more of a political kind of speech, you thought?
It was not the kind of personal details that that you want to that people want to know. I hate to say the old have a beer with someone. but that's, they want to know who this person is in some level. And we didn't get that from them. It was a mix of, get out and do something, and some shots at Trump, and I know Barack Obama's case, some kudos for his old buddy Joe Biden. So there was not enough there from that, and it's too bad because they do know each other. But you gotta, it would be it would be a jam speech, and I guess they chose that route of that. Maybe they felt their main concern was that people are feeling all this energy, feeling the feels, and the vibes are great, but go knock on some doors in Reno, go check out a congressional race in a House race in San Francisco, in Southern California, or the Central Valley. Go travel to a swing state. That's what I think their message was. And so we have to see if two people will get an introduction.
Yeah,
Tim
because
Walz.
Tim Walz is, nobody knows who he is either, and he's speaking tonight. And then I guess the big dog, Bill Clinton, is on. Everybody talks about, famous speeches they remember of his. And I think number one on the list is that 2012 speech he gave for Obama's reelection, where
Yes.
where Obama called him the secretary for explaining stuff.
Yes. Yes.
And it was masterful. I mean, it was an hour. It didn't seem like an hour, but he just really made the economic case. I have not seen Clinton publicly for some number of years. I wonder if he's still got it, or, if he still got the fastball.
Yeah, the last time I saw him was a few years ago. He was speaking at Berkeley, and still excellent. I mean, but he's got the fastball, but I think he's that left-handed reliever out of the bullpen who can give you one inning, maybe an eighth inning, maybe a setup guy. But I don't know if he's going to go. He's definitely not going to go an hour tonight. Oh my God, that would be disastrous.
Yeah, I
But
hope somebody told him. Not that it matters.
yeah, not that it matters, not that it matters. But yeah, so he will be good to see. But I wonder if they put the to stretch our baseball metaphor even more thinly. I wonder if they got the pitch clock on him. So
I was listening to a podcast today.
yes,
Hacks on.
I'll put this on. Here we go.
There you go. Now, I was listening to a podcast with David Axelrod, Hacks on Tap, and he was talking about that 2012 speech, and he said that Obama put him in charge of making sure that Clinton didn't talk too long, so they negotiated, and they finally gave him, 27 minutes or something. And it was the day of the speech. They still hadn't seen the speech, so they finally sent the speech over, and it was 27 minutes. So he said, fine. And then Clinton ended up going 54 minutes because he had memorized other parts of it. And
Oh my God.
Axelrod says he's watching the teleprompter and he's watching the text going by, and they're not matching up exactly because Clinton missed. So it'll be interesting to see how that one goes. I just want to circle back because you said something interesting about House races, that they're saying go check in on a House race or something like that. And it really makes you wonder whether that wasn't the bottom line for Pelosi about forcing Biden out, because it doesn't look like they're going to win the Senate. They're going to lose the Senate just on the numbers, most probably. If Trump was going to win the White House, that's all they're going to have, because the court is gone as well, is the House. So when there's all this talk about the polling data that they showed Biden and so on and so forth, I'll bet that's what it was about, that she felt the House was slipping away, because that's always going to be her
Oh,
first.
absolutely. She's all about the House. And I'm surprised. I was speaking to a top California Democratic Party official the other day, and that person was not bullish about the seats here. This person was saying that maybe two they can flip of the five they're looking at. And now, granted, this was a couple of weeks ago when we saw the early signs of the momentum after the transfer, but this person was not, they thought they could get maybe one of the seats in the Central Valley. maybe one in Southern California, but they were, it's way too close still. And they have to hold some seats too. Even here in California, they have to hold the Katie Porter seat. Um,
Right.
so again, that's that's why almost all the speakers, if they're doing their job, are talking about, hey, this is great. We love all this. Go out and help. If you're really this concerned, channel your positivity into some actual work.
Yeah, I mean, you're there. I'm only watching on TV, but you really do get the sense of this undercurrent of concern that, that what somebody called it a sugar high that they're on now with all the good vibes. People are just so relieved that Biden is gone. But, come September, late September, early October, things tend to change at that point or even out or something. So I don't think this is in the bag by any means. It's going to be a toss-up election. Don't you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, it isn't. It is not in the bag at all. In fact, after the Republican convention that I was at in Milwaukee, I left there. In fact, I was talking to, top California Republican Party officials. Like I was like, wow, you guys look like you've got this, because I've never seen that party that united. Well, really, ever since I've been doing this. And so but they are so rock solid behind Trump, to the point where, I was there right after the assassination attempt, literally, 48 hours and 24 hours after it was on the ground. And they were speaking with him in these reverential tones with they were saying it was divine providence. God was helping him. God wanted him to do this, to live, and all this stuff. And Trump, even, the first part of his speech, if Trump had cut stopped his his acceptance speech at about even 20 minutes, it would have been good. It was like, who is this guy? He was talking, it was very humble. He expressed a lot of humility. He was speaking about, God, I was so grateful. And, it's talking almost a very hushed tone. He's talking softer than Joe Biden was. But then, then he went off on all the other garbage that he talks about and that doesn't really make sense. And so and then it was, that was another hour.
Yeah. Well, it's
Killing
interesting.
our deadline.
You see these Republican establishment type, Nikki Haley or something. Now, if he would only not do this, it's like, this has been 9 years. Why do you think he's going to do anything different than he's ever done? I mean, it's just, it's a silly kind of question. All right, listen, talk a little bit about being on the scene. How's there was a lot of buildup about protests. The Gaza issue is going to split the party and so on. That really hasn't materialized, or has it?
Well, the protests have materialized. In fact, the first day we went, on Monday, it took about 2.5 hours for us to get from our hotel to our chair in the
Wow.
United Center. And that's typically a 15-minute ride. And okay, I'll give you another 15 minutes to get through security, or 20 minutes or whatever. So that was a pain. What had happened is that there was a protest, there's several people arrested, and then so that they shut down all the entrances and funneled everybody into one entrance. And it was just a disaster. And very frustrating for everyone involved. So anyways, so that was, we saw it, and there have been no demonstrations that, of any mention inside the arena. I mean, and 8 years ago, there were demonstrations, not only at, these were pro Bernie Sanders demonstrations.
Bernie, yeah.
They were not only in the venue, but they were at the California Democratic Party breakfasts in the morning. People were getting booed. Barbara Lee was booed. So Barbara Lee, she's to the left of from Oakland. She's to the left of Bernie. Why were the progressives booing her? But it was that's when the fissures were very visible. I remember Pelosi saying then, she said, "Oh no, this is just a family families disagree, and this is just a family argument. Well, a family argument is gonna, might lead to the dissolution of the family, and it
Yeah,
was
I think
a contributing factor.
the California Nurses Association was really in on that. I mean, that was a big Bernie and Medicare for all and all of the.
Yes.
But then you saw Bernie Sanders last night giving a very, as well as AOC the night before.
She
Uh,
was, oh my God, the room exploded when she was there. She was definitely one of the most popular speakers in terms of the audience there. They're very much beloved.
One
And
of the
Bernie,
only ones that stuck to her time limit.
yes. That's, hey, when you have a room of people who are not, when your entire lineup is full of people who do not stick to the time limit, because it's like being on an Olympic team. Everybody, the USA basketball team, you got to play as a team, and it's not everyone's a star in their own team, but let's all get together here and play as a team. But that's, politicians,
Yeah.
that
Well,
works
I
for them.
think that in a way, Monday night was a missed opportunity. And it seemed like there were sort of, I mean, they organized this thing in what, 3 weeks or something. So I'm sure they had the Biden convention all planned, and then they had to sort of graft this on top of it. So it was difficult. But I thought Biden's speech, which probably nobody saw on the East Coast because it was so late, was sort of proved the point about why he needed to go from their perspective.
Yeah, I mean,
Over
it
here.
was better than I thought it would be. I thought his voice sounded stronger, certainly than the debate, and it was clearer. It was, there was some flashes of, anger and passion, especially when he talks. I mean, similar to what he's done in the past when he talks about that. Um, uh, when he talked about Trump talking about
The
fallen
military.
heroes and such. People were killed in combat. That set him off, and even he smiled. You saw the couple of flashes of the Biden smile, so that it was better, but it was still,
Get off my lawn.
yeah,
Get
there's
off my
still there,
lawn.
yeah, it was very obvious that this guy could not have beat Trump.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting if you sort of contrast the way he dealt with Trump and the way that the Obamas did. I mean, he's like this old school senator with these stentorian tone. He's an existential threat to democracy. And then the Obamas made Trump small. I mean, they just belittled him, and mocked him. And I think that's more effective, actually.
It definitely is, because if you're saying he could destroy democracy, well, you're creating him into this major power, which, but I mean, they definitely tried before. So, but and also that's a hard message for people to understand. Like, oh, destroy democracy. Yeah, I mean, the partisans will understand that, but I mean, people are like, okay, well, why are eggs so expensive? When I mean,
Right.
democracy can
Let me
wait.
go check the Federalist Papers again.
Yes.
All right, Joe, you've been so generous with your time. I just want to ask you one more thing. What are you looking for from Harris on Thursday night? Because ultimately, that's all anybody ever remembers is what the presidential nominee said. Do you think she'll go like real personal, a lot of programmatic plan stuff? What do you think?
No, I don't think we're gonna get the laundry list. Because I don't know if she really has one at this point. I mean, she's basically running on the Biden platform, for the most part. I think she needs to introduce herself. And it's as odd as that sounds for someone who's been in the public eye for 20 years. Most of it's been out of the national spotlight. We see some viral videos of her and such over the years when she was in the Senate, but so I want to see, look, who is she? And what makes her tick? I don't see her saying, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. She is going to stick to the tight, what's gotten her this far, the tight framing. I'm the prosecutor, he's the felon. But here we're not, I think it's going to even be not too much on Trump. There'll be some of the set piece lines that they've been using, but I think it's going to be, she's going to be in fight mode. One of the signs there is when we fight, we win. And when Harris is in fight mode, that's when she's at her best. When she gets in the policy weeds, and then, you might lose her.
Yeah. And I wonder about another thing, which is the tone, because I think that's part of the reason she's taken off. So is, joy, she's joyful. And this laugh that Trump was always making fun of, it's out there. She's sort of leaning into it. And who had a great line? I don't know when he said it was Tim Walz when he said, let's get rid of Trump so we can have Thanksgiving again, which I
Yeah.
thought, that's what a
That's
way to put it.
with everyone. That's connects with everyone because many of us live in have divided families, if you will. And my family in Pittsburgh, it's white collar, blue collar, some Republicans in the mix, and some Democrats, and some people don't give a crap about anything. So I think that spoke to people. That spoke to people.
Yeah. All right. Well, Joe Garofoli, senior political writer for the San Francisco Chronicle, thanks so much for filling in a lot of the gaps about Kamala Harris and all of the figures that she came up with, as well as San Francisco. And really appreciate your time and enjoy those parties, Joe,
Oh,
because
well, don't worry. I'll be at the Hard Rock tonight after hours for the California.
Hard Rock, that's all right,
Um,
brother.
thank you so much, and thank you much for everything for helping me and hiring me 24 years ago so I could have this fun job. That, as I say, your voice is always in my head. You are one of the greatest political writers I
Oh,
knew and read, and so thank you.
I always say, Joe, I can't believe they're paying me to do this. So,
I know. Same.
all right, brother, take care.
And I'll talk to you. Bye bye.